Hi there, fourth graders. I want to welcome you back to our Chumash study. I'm very excited today. This is the final lesson from chapter 1 in Sefer Shmot, meaning that you guys really know a whole chapter of Chumash very well. And when we get to the point that we've finished a chapter, my tendency is to think we need to celebrate in some way. So we need to have a discussion online. I think we'll do that tomorrow. Well, where we will discuss how, given our situation being at home, we can celebrate in some way the fact that we've completed a whole chapter of Chumash, because I think it's very exciting. So I'm just going to do a little overview of what we learned in our last lesson, because it's been a few weeks. We were talking about the women who were part of Paro's second plan to deal with what he thought was a Jewish problem in his country, because the Ivrim, the Hebrews, had grown so tremendously, and his first plan was to make them slaves, and they still kept growing. So his second plan was these Miyaldot Ivriot, the Hebrew midwives. So let's just do a quick review of what we learned about the Hebrew midwives before. So we had learned this: Shem ha'achat Shifra, v'shem ha'shenit Pu'ah. So the first one's name was Shifra, and the second one's name was Pu'ah. And we know that Paro told them that when they were helping the women give birth, he gave them these instructions. Im benhu v'ha'amiten oto. If it's a boy, im benhu v'ha'amiten oto, kill him. V'im bati, if it's a daughter, v'chaya, she will live. So that's the second thing that we learned. Those were the instructions Paro gave to the Miyaldot. But things did not go the way Paro assumed. And we learn, Vatirena ha-Miyaldot et ha-Elokim v'lo asu. So let's take a look here at Vatirena. I want you, that should have been my highlighter. Let's make sure that's nice and... Vatirena, you should recognize the shoresh here for feared. The Miyaldot feared, Vatirena ha-Miyaldot et ha-Elohim. And here I would also like to, I'm trying to find the right pen to show you, to highlight here. Okay. Elohim. Vatirena et ha-Elohim. They feared God. V'lo asu, and they didn't do it. Vayitzav Paro lochol amo. So here's Paro's third plan. Paro commands. Vayitzav Paro, he commands lochol amo, to his entire people. Kol haben hayilud, every boy haben hayilud that is born, hayeora tashlihuhu, to the Nile River, tashlihuhu. This is like lehashlich oto. Throw him into the Nile River. So that brings us up to date on all of the learning that we had done up until now. We are told that the Miyaldot feared God, and we don't really know a lot about what that means. But this page is asking us to imagine a conversation between Shifra and Puah after Paro has given them instructions. Im benhu v'ha'amitenoto, if it's a boy, kill him. So I would like you at this point to pause the video, And I want you to imagine, what did Shifra say to Pua when they gained these instructions? Imagine the two of them alone talking. What would Shifra had said to Pua? What would Pua have answered back? What would Shifra then have said, and what would Pua have said then again? I want to see a conversation here. As they talk about the instructions that they were given, and we know that they feared God, we know that they didn't do this. What do you think their conversation looked like? So pause your computer now, take out your pencil, and I would like you to go ahead and write this conversation up. And when you're finished with that, then I would like you to continue on with the video. Okay, so at this point, you've finished writing. You may have written something similar to what I wrote. You may not have. I'm asking you to use your imagination. That's quite all right. But I hear Shifra and Pua in my imagination having a conversation about what the right thing to do is. Are there consequences? What's going to happen if they don't follow through on the Paro's plan? And them having to come up with a decision on how they're going to move forward. The textbooks now on page 22 and number 5 at the bottom wants to point out that the words miyaldot ha'ivriot here are vague. I've mentioned before, we're not entirely sure what the translation is. And the difference is very small in how we translate it, but the meaning is huge. So, miyaldot ha'ivriot could be that the word ivriot, Hebrew, is telling us something about who the midwives are. That they are ivriot, that they are midwives who are Hebrew women. If that's the case, then we're faced with a question. Why would Pharaoh ask Hebrew women to kill Hebrew baby boys? Did he think they would go through with it? However, we're told that the women feared God. Does that mean that they were Hebrew women? It's not quite clear to us. The other thing we have to think about is the other possibility. Hebrew, with its grammar, leaves this possibility open, that miyaldot ha'ivriot means ha'miyaldot shel ha'ivriot, the midwives of the Hebrew women, which means they could have been Egyptian midwives who worked to help the Hebrew women have babies. If that's the case, we can understand why Paro might ask them to be involved in the plan. He thinks that because they're not Hebrew women, that they would be happy to kill the little boys. The other thing, though, that it brings up is if they are Egyptian women, what does it mean to us that they feared God? So both options are possible. And I want you to keep that in mind because I think that we learn different things depending on who they were. If they were Hebrew women, then they went out of their way to help save their own people. And that makes them real heroes to us. If they are Egyptian women, then we learn something entirely different. They're not going out of their way and risking themselves to save their own people. They're going out of their way to risk themselves for people who are not even part of their community. And that also makes them tremendous heroes. And we can learn something from either one of those possible translations. So I like leaving it open. I don't want to decide which one it means. I like both of them because I can learn from both possibilities. I am not asking you to fill in this or this. You are excused from filling them in, but I do want you to think about who do you think Shifra and Pua were? Were Shifra and Pua Hebrew women, or were they women who were Egyptian, but they worked delivering Hebrew babies? Now, if there's this big of a question in the text, certainly you know that who the Miyaldot HaIvriot are is going to be something that there will be midrashim about. So I better put on my mishkafei midrash. Well, you know, if there is something this unclear in the text, that Rashi is going to have something to say about it. And what he has to say about it is mind-boggling. Take a moment to look at Rashi's comment on the name Shifra, and take a moment to look at his commentary on the name Pu'ah, because he is giving us the answer to this question in his opinion. Just look at it for a minute. I know we haven't looked at Rashi's script in many weeks, but see if you can read these. If you need to pause your computer, go ahead and do that while you figure it out. He's not only telling us if he thinks they are Hebrew women or not, he's telling us exactly who he thinks they are. And they're people we've already encountered in the story. He is telling us the midwife Shifra is Yocheved, Moshe's mother. And he's telling us that in his opinion, Pu'ah is Moses' sister Miriam. So this is fascinating to me. Obviously, if that's who he thinks the characters are, he clearly thinks that we are talking about Hebrew women, not Egyptian women, who Paro told to go kill the Hebrew babies. Which brings up for us a number of other questions about why Paro would think that Hebrew women would be killing Egyptian babies. And different commentators come up with different answers because you could really argue it either way. So what I'd like to do now is talk about what we can understand from the term that the text gives us about somebody, calling somebody God-fearing. What is it to say that somebody is Yirei Elohim, God-fearing? Now, the most obvious thing would be to say that maybe that means that they're Jewish. Although in the Bible, when the word Elohim is used, oftentimes that word doesn't necessarily only refer to the God that Bnei Yisrael understand, but it can be a more generic term. It could be referring to the whole idea of gods, meaning whoever anybody believed in. So it could be that somebody that we say is Yirei Elohim, God-fearing, it doesn't have to mean that they're Jewish. And as a matter of fact, when we look through other places in the Tanakh, we do find examples where people who are not Jewish are called Yirei Elohim. So it doesn't have to be a Jewish person. Now, many people use that as their reason, though. This term is their reason to think that they were Jewish midwives. But let's leave aside whether they're Jewish midwives or not. And let's just talk about what does it mean to be God-fearing? Because I think that that is very important here. So some of you are using the English book or the Hebrew book. It's the same. If you've got the English book, and I took this today out of the Hebrew book, just follow along. You'll see the English, but I will be writing in here in the Hebrew one. This first one, it's saying somebody who is God-fearing, here's one of his characteristics. Hu oseh et hadavar hatzodek. He does the right thing. So, anybody who's God-fearing, it means it's somebody who does the right thing. Do you have to be Jewish to do the right thing? No, not necessarily. So the question they're asking you on this page is, the midwives were God-fearing because, and they want you to think, what's the right thing that they did? What made them God-fearing? So take a moment and write your answer there. Your answer may say they didn't kill the babies. It could be they didn't do what Pharaoh asked them because that was the wrong thing. Or you could have come up with a different answer there. Let's look at the next thing that we know about what it means to be God-fearing. It says here, on this one, the yellow one, they do the right thing, even if it's hard to do the right thing, or even if it's dangerous. So was it hard or dangerous for the midwives to do the right thing here? Well, there was danger involved. Think about who it was that gave them the order. So there is danger. They are defying Pharaoh. Pharaoh could have had them killed. There's a real big risk they're taking on here. So I would say yes. Go ahead and write here exactly what was dangerous or difficult about what the midwives did. You can pause your computer while you do this. All right, we're going to move on to this. Okay, looking at this one here. So this person who is doing the right thing is doing it without the expectation of a reward. So here we know that the midwives did receive a reward. It does tell us in the text that God made them houses, which we understand to mean he gave them large families. But did they know that was going to happen? Did they do it for the reward? No. The answer for this one would have to do with the fact that they didn't know there was going to be a reward for doing it. So go ahead, pause the computer, write your answer. For this last one, I think this one's a little bit less clear, but it says, that a person who fears God does what's important to God. So here, we could say that God was causing Bnei Israel to grow, so they knew that it was important to God that Bnei Israel grow and not die off. Or you could just say, this could go back and be related here to this one here, where they did the right thing by not killing the boys. So you can write either of those down. They didn't kill the children because it was wrong. Or you could write, they didn't kill the children and God wanted Bnei Israel to be large. So there are your options. Mazel tov, everyone. You've just finished chapter 1 of Sefer Shmot. I'm so proud of you. So now your job is to start thinking, how are we going to celebrate? Even though we're at home, we've got to celebrate. So you come up with ideas and we're going to talk about them tomorrow.